The most stupid tourists who ignored every warning didn't miss the signs. They read them, photographed them, and stepped over them anyway. The barrier, the railing, the rope, each one was put there by someone who already knew how this ends. So let's start where the warnings were loudest and the people listened least. On June 7, 2016, 23-year-old Colin Nathaniel Scott, a recent college graduate from Portland, Oregon, was on a road trip with his sister, Sable. Colin was an educated, environmentally minded young man, reportedly headed for a psychology PhD and working at a wetlands preserve. They were visiting the Norris Geyser Basin, one of the hottest and most volatile thermal areas in Yellowstone. The basin is a landscape of surreal, steaming beauty, but it is also one of the most dangerous places on Earth, a fact made abundantly clear by the dozens of signs and the sturdy wooden boardwalks designed to keep visitors safe. Colin and Sable had a specific, reckless goal. They were looking for a place to illegally hot pot, or soak in a thermal spring. This activity is strictly prohibited throughout the park, and for good reason. The water is often superheated far beyond the boiling point at sea level, and the ground is fragile, capable of collapsing under a person's weight. Despite the clear warnings, the siblings were determined to find a secluded spot for a forbidden dip. They deliberately left the designated boardwalk, stepping over a clearly marked boundary and venturing approximately 225 feet, 68.5 meters, into a closed thermal area. Sable even recorded the excursion on her phone, documenting their fatal mistake. They walked across the thin, brittle crust of the geyser basin, a surface that looks solid, but is often just a fragile shell over boiling mud and water. They reached a small, churning pool near the pork chop geyser. The water was a terrifying, milky turquoise, and the air was thick with the smell of sulfur. Colin knelt down to test the temperature of the water with his hand. In that moment, the ground beneath him, weakened by the geothermal activity, gave way. He slipped, losing his balance, and plunged headfirst into the scalding, acidic pool. Sable immediately tried to pull her brother out, but the heat was unbearable, and the shock of the fall had already incapacitated him. She was forced to retreat, scrambling back across the treacherous ground to the safety of the boardwalk. Park rangers arrived quickly, but by the time they reached the remote pool, it was too late. They could see Colin's remains and personal items, including his wallet and flip-flops, floating in the water. The pool's temperature was measured at over 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius, above the boiling point at Yellowstone's elevation, and the water was mildly acidic. The recovery operation was halted due to the extreme danger. When rangers returned the next day, they found no recoverable remains. Colin Scott had been completely dissolved by the park's natural chemistry. An educated young man who worked to preserve wetlands had become a gruesome cautionary tale, his body chemically erased by the very nature he sought to embrace. The year was 1981, and 24-year-old David Allen Kerwin, a young man from La Cañada, California, was visiting the fountain paint pot area of Yellowstone with his friend, Ronald Ratliff. They were driving near the Celestine Pool, a thermal spring known for its beautiful blue color and its deadly temperature, which averaged 183.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 84.1 degrees Celsius, but could reach over 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 93 degrees Celsius. Traveling with them was Kerwin's dog, a large black Labrador named Moosey. The situation changed instantly when Moosey escaped the truck. The dog, likely confused by the steam and the strange ground, ran toward the thermal area. In a moment of canine confusion, Moosey leaped into the Celestine Pool. The dog immediately began to yelp in agony, struggling against the scalding water. Kerwin, overcome by emotion and a desperate need to save his pet, reacted instantly and tragically. Bystanders, including Ratliff, shouted at Kerwin, warning him not to enter the water. They knew the danger. The signs were everywhere, and the steam itself was a warning. But Kerwin, blinded by panic and love for his dog, ignored them all. As he ran toward the pool, one witness reportedly yelled, "Don't do it!" Kerwin's response, according to multiple accounts, was a shout of pure fatalistic defiance. "Like hell I won't!" He took 2 steps into the pool before diving headfirst into the near boiling water. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Kerwin was instantly and severely burned. He managed to reach the dog, but the heat was too much. He was forced to abandon Moosey, who was already dead, and struggle back towards the edge. Ratliff and other onlookers managed to pull Kerwin out of the pool. The scene was horrific. Kerwin had suffered 3rd-degree burns over his entire body. His skin was peeling away, and his eyes were reportedly milky white from the heat. He was rushed to a hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah, a journey of over 300 miles, 480 kilometers. Despite the best efforts of the medical team, David Allen Kerwin died the following morning. The cause of death was massive organ failure and infection resulting from the full-body 3rd-degree burns. Moosey, the dog he died trying to save, was never recovered, his body dissolving in the thermal spring. It was a moment of misplaced heroism, a fatal decision made in a split second of panic and love. Estefania Lisette Mosquera Alcivar was a young woman in her early 20s from Ecuador, working a seasonal concession job in Yellowstone during the summer of 2016. She was familiar with the park, but familiarity can breed a dangerous contempt for the rules. On August 26, 2016, in the dead of night, she and a group of co-workers decided to visit Grand View Point on the north rim of the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. It was not a technical hike, but a casual gathering in a place that demands absolute respect, even in daylight. At approximately 3:15 a.m. in pitch darkness, Estefania was near the canyon rim. The Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone is a massive chasm, with sheer drops of over 1,000 feet, 300 meters. The overlook is protected by railings and barriers, but these are designed to keep people safe during normal visiting hours and when visibility is good. In the total darkness, with no visual cues and no light other than perhaps a cell phone, Estefania somehow strayed beyond the constructed path and the safety barriers. The exact circumstances of her final steps are unknown, but the result was immediate and fatal. She fell from the rim. Her co-workers, who were nearby, realized instantly what had happened and called for help. Park rangers responded, but a recovery operation in the canyon at night was impossible. They had to wait for daylight. Estefania's body was located and recovered by park staff later that morning. The official finding was a fall from the canyon rim. Her death is a stark lesson in the lethal combination of darkness and complacency. As a park employee, she should have understood the danger of a 1,000-foot, 300-meter drop. Going to a canyon rim in the middle of the night is an act of profound recklessness that nullifies every safety measure the park has put in place. In the summer of 2022, 70-year-old Il-hun Ro, a visitor from California, was exploring the West Thumb Geyser Basin, a popular thermal area right on the shore of Yellowstone Lake. This basin is known for its beautiful, deep pools, including the Abyss Pool, which plunges to a depth of over 50 feet, 15 meters. Like all thermal areas, it is surrounded by boardwalks and signs warning visitors to stay on the path. The exact moment Il-hun Ro entered the Abyss Pool is a mystery. There were no immediate witnesses, and the details of his final moments have not been fully released. What is known is that he ended up in the pool itself, a body of water that is extremely hot and deep. Whether he slipped, intentionally entered, or was trying to retrieve something is unclear, but the result was the same. He was consumed by the thermal water. The incident was not reported until weeks later. In August 2022, another visitor spotted something floating in the Abyss Pool, a shoe with part of a human foot still inside. Park investigators were able to link the partial remains to Il-hun Ro. concluding that he had died in the pool on or around July 31st. The rest of his body, like Colin Scott's 6 years earlier, had been destroyed by the superheated water. The discovery of a single partial foot in a shoe is a chilling testament to the destructive power of Yellowstone's thermal features. It is a reminder that the park's most beautiful features are also its most efficient destroyers of human remains. Even with the viral stories, the constant warnings, and the clear boardwalks designed to keep people meters away from the edge, people still find ways to end up inside these boiling pools. While fatal bison attacks are rare, only 2 recorded in the park's history, the sheer number of non-fatal gorings illustrates a pattern of breathtaking stupidity driven by the modern obsession with the perfect photo. The park is home to thousands of bison, massive animals that can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, 900 kilograms, and run 3 times faster than a human. The rule is simple, absolute, and constantly repeated. Stay at least 25 yards, 23 meters away from bison. The summer of 2015 saw a cluster of incidents that perfectly encapsulated this modern folly. In May, a 16-year-old Taiwanese exchange student was visiting the Old Faithful area. She approached a bison, getting within about 3 to 6 feet, 1 to 2 meters. She then made the ultimate mistake. She turned her back to the animal to take a photo. The bison, feeling threatened, gored her and tossed her into the air. In June, a 62-year-old Australian tourist approached a resting bison near an asphalt path, getting within 3 to 5 feet, 1 to 1.5 meters. The bison charged, gored him, and repeatedly tossed him into the air. In July, a 43-year-old woman and her daughter tried for a photo with a bison about 6 yards, 5.5 meters, away near Fairy Falls. Despite being warned by other visitors, she persisted. The bison charged, tossing her into the air. All 3 of these victims survived, but they suffered severe injuries, including puncture wounds, broken bones, and internal bleeding. They were incredibly lucky. Their survival was not due to their skill, but to the bison's choice to stop the attack. In every case, the investigation was simple. The victim violated the 25-yard rule. When interviewed, one victim reportedly admitted that they had read the warnings but saw other people close to the bison, so they thought it would be okay. This is the core of the stupidity, the belief that the rules apply to everyone else, but not to them. Brian Matayoshi, a 57-year-old man from Torrance, California, was an experienced hiker. On July 6, 2011, he and his wife, Marilyn, were hiking on the Wapiti Lake Trail, a remote area in the park. They were carrying bear bells and making noise, but they were not carrying bear spray, a crucial mistake. Around 10:50 a.m., the couple rounded a blind corner and came face to face with a sow grizzly bear and her 2 cubs. The distance was dangerously close, estimated to be only about 100 feet, 30 meters. The bear, feeling threatened by the sudden appearance of the humans near her young, immediately charged. In a moment of pure panic, Brian Matayoshi made the single most fatal mistake a person can make in a defensive bear encounter. He turned and ran. The grizzly, instinctively viewing the running man as prey, immediately pursued and caught him. The bear attacked Brian, biting and clawing him. Marilyn, following the advice of park rangers, immediately dropped to the ground, covered her head, and played dead. The sow reached Brian first, delivering a fatal bite that punctured his femoral artery. The bear then approached Marilyn, picked her up by her backpack, and dropped her, but left her unharmed. Satisfied that the threat was neutralized, Marilyn lay motionless for several minutes until the bear and her cubs moved away. She then ran to find help. The investigation confirmed that the attack was defensive, triggered by the hikers surprising the sow and her cubs at close range. The critical mistake was running. Park guidelines explicitly state that in a defensive encounter, you must stand your ground, make yourself look large, and use bear spray. Running triggers the bear's predatory instinct. Brian Matayoshi's experience as a hiker was completely negated by his panic-driven, fatal decision to run. His wife, Marilyn, survived by doing the exact opposite. Lance Crosby, a 63-year-old man from Billings, Montana, was a longtime seasonal employee of Yellowstone, working as a nurse in the park's medical clinics. He was familiar with the park, its trails, and its dangers. On August 6, 2015, he decided to go for a hike near the Elephant Back Loop Trail. Crosby made 3 critical, reckless decisions that sealed his fate. He was hiking alone, he was hiking off-trail in a popular bear area, and he was not carrying bear spray. He ventured approximately 0.5 miles, 0.8 kilometers, off the designated trail. In that remote, quiet area, he surprised a sow grizzly bear with her 2 cubs. The bear, again, felt threatened. The attack was swift and brutal. Crosby, alone and without any means of defense, was quickly overpowered. The bear killed him and then began to partially consume his body, caching the remains for a later meal. Crosby was reported missing when he failed to show up for work. His body was found next day, August 7th, by park rangers. The scene was immediately recognized as a predatory attack, as the bear had partially consumed the body and was actively guarding the cache. The sow grizzly was captured just 30 feet, 9 meters, from where Crosby's body was cached. DNA analysis confirmed she was the killer. The bear was euthanized, and her 2 cubs were sent to a zoo. The investigation concluded that Crosby's failure to carry bear spray and his decision to hike alone and off-trail in a known bear habitat were the primary contributing factors to his death. As a park employee, he knew the rules better than anyone, yet he chose to ignore the most basic safety precautions. He was a nurse, a man dedicated to saving lives, who lost his own due to a series of avoidable decisions. On September 12, 2017, a family from Meolo, near Venice, was enjoying a sightseeing trip to the Solfatara crater in Pozzuoli, Italy. Massimo Carrere, 45, his wife Tiziana Zaramella, 42, and their 11-year-old son Lorenzo were exploring the famous Fangaia area, a zone known for its bubbling mud pools and sulfurous fumaroles. Despite the roped-off barriers and clear warning signs, Lorenzo reportedly crossed into a restricted area to get a closer look at the volcanic activity. It was a decision that would destroy the family in a matter of seconds. As Lorenzo stepped onto what looked like solid ground, the thin crust above a gas-filled cavity suddenly gave way. He plunged into a pit roughly 7 to 10 feet deep, filled with boiling mud and concentrated volcanic gases. In a desperate, instinctive attempt to save their son, both Massimo and Tiziana rushed into the hole after him. They didn't realize that the pit wasn't just a physical trap. It was a concentrated pocket of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Within moments of entering the depression, the toxic fumes overwhelmed all 3 of them, causing rapid loss of consciousness and respiratory failure. Horrified witnesses and park staff could only watch as the rescue attempt turned into a triple tragedy. When firefighters finally reached the bottom of the pit, they found all 3 family members unresponsive. The only survivor was the couple's youngest son, a 7-year-old who had stayed behind the barrier and watched his entire family vanish into the earth. The official cause of death was ruled as asphyxiation from toxic gas inhalation, combined with the trauma of the fall. The Solfatara crater was temporarily closed for investigation, serving as a grim reminder that in volcanic terrain, the most lethal hazards are often the ones you can't see until it's too late. The 7-year-old son, who survived, was left to be cared for by social workers and relatives, a haunting image of a family vacation that ended in a triple funeral. Local authorities in Pozzuoli later faced intense scrutiny over the adequacy of the barriers, as the Fangaia area was known to be particularly unstable after heavy rains. the tragedy remains one of the most cited examples of ground collapse hazards in geothermal tourism, proving that even a roped-off path offers no protection if the very earth beneath it is hollowed out by volcanic acid. The Solfatara crater claimed more than just the Carrer family in 2017. It also became the site of a chilling forensic study involving 3 other tourists who met a similarly silent end. These victims, a middle-aged couple and their teenage child, were exploring the geothermal terrace when they wandered into a shallow, 8-foot-deep depression often referred to as a volcanic pothole. Unlike the dramatic eruptions we see in movies, their deaths were quiet, clinical, and terrifyingly fast. Recent heavy rainfall had made the ground particularly unstable, and as the group entered the low-lying area, they stepped into a pool of invisible, odorless gas. In active fumarole fields like Solfatara, carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide naturally pool in depressions because they are heavier than air. The victims likely didn't even realize they were in danger until their lungs stopped working. Forensic measurements taken at the site later revealed that the bottom of the pothole contained nearly 98% carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide levels exceeding 2,200 parts per million, concentrations that cause instant knockdown and death within minutes. When rescuers found the bodies, there were no signs of a struggle, suggesting the family had lost consciousness almost immediately upon entering the gas pocket. The autopsy reports highlighted acute pulmonary edema and respiratory paralysis, classic signs of confined space, volcanic gas poisoning. This case is often cited by volcanologists to illustrate how a place that looks superficially safe can become a lethal trap. The irony is that these tourists weren't killed by heat or lava, but by the very air they were breathing, proving that at a volcano, even a shallow hole in the ground can be as deadly as a 1,000-foot cliff. Forensic experts who analyzed the site noted that the pothole acted like a natural gas chamber, where the lack of wind allowed the heavy CO2 to displace all breathable oxygen. The victims likely felt a sudden sense of fatigue, followed by a rapid loss of motor control, and finally, a peaceful but terminal sleep. It's a terrifyingly clinical way to die, far removed from the explosive violence we usually associate with volcanoes, but no less final. The study of these specific deaths has since been used to train park rangers worldwide on the dangers of low-lying depressions in active volcanic fields. Kawah Ijen in Indonesia is world famous for its blue fire and its stunning turquoise acid lake, making it a magnet for Instagrammers and travel bloggers. On April 20th, 2024, 31-year-old Chinese tourist Huang Lihong arrived at the crater rim with her husband and a local guide just before sunrise. The goal was simple: capture the perfect photo against the backdrop of the steaming volcanic landscape. But as the sun began to rise, the pursuit of that one perfect shot turned into a nightmare. Huang began posing for photos dangerously, close to the edge of a 250-foot cliff overlooking the crater. Her guide, sensing the danger, reportedly warned her multiple times to maintain a safe distance of at least 6 to 10 feet from the rim. Huang initially listened, but as she tried to frame a better shot, she began walking backward to get more of the volcano in the frame. In a tragic twist of fate, her long skirt, a choice of clothing ill-suited for a volcanic trek, caught on a rock or restricted her movement. She tripped, lost her balance, and vanished over the edge in front of her horrified husband. She fell approximately 250 feet down the steep, rocky slope of the crater. It took search and rescue teams nearly 2 hours to reach her location due to the difficult terrain and toxic sulfur fumes. By the time they found her, she had already succumbed to massive blunt force trauma from the fall. The incident sparked a massive debate in Indonesia about tourist safety, and the selfie culture that drives people to ignore life-saving warnings for the sake of social media engagement. Kawah Ijen remains open, but the specific spot where Huang fell has since been heavily restricted, a permanent scar on the rim of one of the world's most beautiful but unforgiving volcanoes. Her husband, who was taking the photos at the time, was reportedly inconsolable as he watched his wife vanish into the sulfurous mist. The guide later told police that he had pleaded with the couple to move back, but the allure of the perfect angle was too strong. This case serves as a grim warning to the millions of adventure tourists who flock to Indonesia every year. The volcano doesn't care about your follower count, and a single misplaced step is all it takes to turn a viral moment into a final one. Local authorities have since considered mandatory safety briefings for all hikers entering the crater area, though enforcement remains a challenge in such a vast and rugged landscape. Mount Rinjani, an active volcano on the island of Lombok, is one of Indonesia's most challenging and rewarding treks. June 21st, 2025. 26-year-old Brazilian tourist Juliana de Souza Pereira Marins was part of a guided group making the grueling ascent towards the summit. As the sun began to rise, Juliana reportedly told her guide she was feeling exhausted and requested a short rest stop. In a decision that would later be heavily criticized, the guide and the rest of the group continued upward, leaving Juliana alone on a hazardous section of the trail. When the guide eventually returned to check on her, Juliana was nowhere to be found. She had vanished from the narrow path. A massive search operation was launched, and for days, the outcome remained a mystery. The breakthrough came when other hikers reported hearing faint cries for help coming from deep within a nearby ravine. A drone was launched by bystanders, and the footage it captured was haunting. Juliana was spotted alive but severely injured, stranded hundreds of feet down in a nearly inaccessible volcanic gully. Despite the visual confirmation, the terrain was so steep and the conditions so treacherous that it took rescuers 4 days to reach her. By the time they finally rappelled down to her location, Juliana had passed away. An autopsy later revealed she had died from severe internal bleeding in her chest, caused by the initial fall. Her death caused an international outcry, particularly in Brazil, focusing on the safety standards of commercial treks and the fatal mistake of leaving a fatigued hiker unsupervised in such a high-risk environment. Juliana's story remains a chilling example of how quickly a dream vacation can turn into a multi-day struggle for survival in the shadow of a volcano. The drone footage, which showed her moving and apparently trying to signal for help, added a layer of hope that made the eventual discovery of her body even more devastating for her family in Rio de Janeiro. The guide's decision to leave her alone was a clear violation of basic mountain safety protocols. Yet it is a mistake that happens surprisingly often in the high-pressure world of commercial trekking. Mount Rinjani is a beautiful but brutal environment, where the thin air and steep slopes can quickly overwhelm even fit hikers. Juliana's death led to a temporary suspension of trekking permits for the agency involved, and a renewed focus on the buddy system for all guided groups on Indonesia's active peaks. It is a tragic reminder that in the wilderness, your greatest asset is the person standing next to you, and being left alone is often the first step toward a disaster. Kilauea in Hawaii is often called the world's only drive-in volcano because of its relative accessibility, but that reputation for safety is deeply deceptive. In 1924, during a series of violent explosive eruptions at the Halemaumau crater, a photographer, whose name is often lost to history, but whose fate is legendary, decided to get as close as possible to the action. He wanted to capture the raw power of the erupting vent, ignoring the fact that the volcano was literally throwing boulders the size of cars into the air. As he set up his equipment near the rim, a massive explosion sent a barrage of volcanic blocks, known as ejecta, screaming into the sky. While most people were running for their lives, the photographer stayed to get the shot. He was struck and killed instantly by a falling rock, becoming one of the few documented fatalities of that eruption cycle. But Kilauea's bizarre body count didn't stop there. Between 1983 and 2003, at least 5 other tourists met a much quieter end, not from falling rocks, but from the volcano's invisible breath. These victims were often found collapsed near viewpoints or along crater rim roads, having succumbed to sulfur dioxide poisoning. Volcanic gas can aggravate pre-existing heart and lung conditions so severely that it causes sudden respiratory failure. The irony of Kilauea is that while millions of people visit every year to see the friendly lava, the real killers are often the invisible plumes of gas that can drift miles away from the actual eruption. These deaths eventually led to the permanent closure of several crater rim roads and the implementation of a sophisticated gas monitoring system that can shut down entire sections of the park in seconds when SO2 levels spike. The 1924 photographer, whose death was captured in the historical records of the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory, remains a symbol of the danger zone that exists around Halemaumau. His camera was found near his body, a silent witness to the final moments of a man who traded his life for a glimpse of the Earth's interior. The gas victims of the 80s and 90s, meanwhile, represent a more modern hazard. The tourist who believes that if a road is open, it must be safe. Hawaii Volcanoes National Park is one of the most visited in the US, but it is also one of the most geologically volatile. The park's lava viewing areas are constantly shifted based on wind patterns and gas concentrations, a never-ending game of cat and mouse between the Park Service and the volcano's toxic breath. For those 5 tourists, the game ended in a quiet collapse on a scenic overlook, a bizarre and lonely way to die in paradise. In July 2023, the Litli Hrútur eruption in Iceland became a global sensation, with spectacular footage of fresh lava flows drawing thousands of tourists to the Reykjanes Peninsula. Among them was a male tourist in his 60s who joined the throngs of people making the trek to see the new volcano. The hike was marketed by some as a walk-up eruption, but in reality, it was a grueling 12-mile round trip over uneven, razor-sharp lava fields and through thick clouds of volcanic gas. On July 18th, as the man neared the active lava field, the physical strain of the environment became too much. He collapsed in front of other hikers, becoming completely unresponsive. The Icelandic Coast Guard was called, and a helicopter was dispatched to the remote site to evacuate him. Despite the rapid response and the flight to the National University Hospital in Reykjavik, he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. While the official cause was listed as a medical incident, local rescuers were quick to point out that the man had likely suffered a cardiac event triggered by extreme physical exertion and gas exposure. The tragedy highlighted a growing problem in Iceland: the overestimation of volcanic hikes. Thousands of tourists, many of whom are not regular hikers, attempt these treks in sneakers and light clothing, unaware that the combination of altitude, distance, and toxic fumes can be fatal, even if you never touch the lava. Following this death, Icelandic authorities were forced to adjust route access and post much stronger warnings, emphasizing that visiting an active eruption is a serious mountaineering undertaking, not a casual afternoon stroll. The man's death remains the first and only fatality of the Litli Hrútur eruption, a somber footnote to a summer of spectacular geological fire. Icelandic search and rescue teams, known as Ice SAR, had already performed hundreds of minor rescues that summer, ranging from twisted ankles to exhausted hikers who simply couldn't make the return trip. The death of the tourist in his 60s was the worst-case scenario they had been warning about for weeks. The Reykjanes Peninsula is a harsh, treeless landscape where the weather can turn from sunny to life-threatening in minutes, and the volcanic gases only add to the physical toll. The irony of the tourist eruption is that it looks so accessible on social media, but the reality is a grueling test of endurance that many visitors are simply not prepared for. His death served as a wake-up call for the Icelandic tourism industry, leading to more frequent trail closures during periods of high gas concentration and a more honest assessment of the hike's difficulty in official brochures. It was a high price to pay for a lesson in mountain safety. Whakaari, also known as White Island, was once one of New Zealand's premier adventure tourism destinations. On December 9, 2019, 47 people, mostly Australian tourists from a nearby cruise ship, were walking inside the crater of the active island volcano. The island was marketed as a bucket list experience, where visitors could wear gas masks and stroll past steaming vents that looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. But at 2:11 p.m., the theme park atmosphere vanished in a roar of steam and ash. A sudden phreatic eruption, a steam-driven blast caused by water hitting hot rock, exploded from the crater floor. Unlike a lava eruption, there was no warning. A wall of superheated steam, toxic gas, and acidic ash swept across the crater at hundreds of miles per hour. The tourists had nowhere to hide. Some managed to reach the water and were picked up by tour boats, but the injuries were horrific. In total, 22 people died, many of them weeks later in specialized burn units after suffering from internal and external thermal injuries that were described by doctors as unsurvivable. The aftermath of the disaster led to a massive legal battle in New Zealand. Prosecutors argued that tour operators had ignored increased volcanic unrest levels and failed to warn tourists that a life-ending eruption could occur at any second. Several companies were eventually found guilty of safety failures and ordered to pay millions in fines. The disaster effectively ended tourism on Whakaari, and the island remains a restricted zone today. It stands as one of the deadliest examples of volcano tourism in history, proving that no matter how many safety masks you wear, you are still standing in the throat of a giant that can wake up at any moment. The survivors of the Whakaari eruption described a scene of absolute chaos, with the sky turning black and the air becoming a searing liquid that burned their lungs with every breath. Some victims were so badly injured that they couldn't be identified for days, and the specialized skin grafts required for the survivors had to be flown in from as far away as the United States. The legal fallout from the disaster has permanently changed the landscape of adventure tourism in New Zealand, with a much higher burden of proof now required for operators to prove they are managing unpredictable risks. For the 22 who died, the bucket list trip ended in a nightmare of steam and ash, a bizarre and horrific reminder that some places on Earth are simply not meant for casual visitation. The island remains a silent tomb, visible from the mainland, but now strictly off-limits to the public. David A. Johnston was not a tourist. He was one of the world's leading volcanologists, working for the U.S. Geological Survey. In the spring of 1980, he was part of the team monitoring the ominous bulge on the north face of Mount St. Helens in Washington state. On the morning of May 18th, Johnston was stationed at an observation post called Coldwater 2, located about 6 miles north of the summit. He was there to replace a colleague who had to attend a conference, a twist of fate that would place him directly in the path of history. At 8:32 a.m., a massive earthquake triggered the largest landslide in recorded history, causing the entire north face of the mountain to collapse. This released the pressure on the magma inside, resulting in a lateral blast, a supersonic explosion of hot gas and rock that shot out sideways instead of up. Johnston had just enough time to grab his radio and shout his final words. "Vancouver! Vancouver! This is it!" Before the observation post was obliterated by a wall of fire and debris moving at over 300 miles per hour. Johnston was killed instantly, along with 56 others. Despite extensive search efforts, his body was never found. Only fragments of his equipment and the destroyed observation site remained. His death was a massive blow to the scientific community, but it also led to a fundamental shift in how we understand volcanic hazards. The failure wasn't Johnston's judgment, but the scientific model of the time, which hadn't fully accounted for the reach and power of a lateral blast. Today, the ridge where he died is named Johnston Ridge in his honor, a permanent memorial to a man who gave his life to understand the very force that claimed him. His final radio transmission, "Vancouver, Vancouver, this is it," has become one of the most famous and haunting recordings in the history of science. It was the sound of a man realizing that his world was ending in a way that no one had predicted. The lateral blast of Mount St. Helens was a black swan event in volcanology. Disaster that redefined the field and saved countless lives in the decades that followed by expanding our understanding of how volcanoes can fail. Johnston's sacrifice is taught in every geology classroom in the world, a reminder that the pursuit of knowledge often comes with a terrible price. His body may never have been found, but his legacy is written in the safer evacuation zones and better monitoring systems that protect millions of people living in the shadow of the world's most dangerous peaks. He died doing exactly what he loved, at the very moment the Earth revealed its greatest secret. Yosemite National Park is home to some of the most iconic waterfalls on the planet, and Vernal Fall is a crown jewel. On July 19, 2011, three friends, Hormiz David, 22, Ninos Yakub, 27, and Ramina Badal, 21, hiked the popular Mist Trail to reach the top of the 317-foot drop. It was a beautiful summer day, but the Merced River was anything but calm. Some exceptional winter snowpack meant the water was high, fast, and bone-chillingly cold. You can just imagine the scene, right? A perfect day, the sun is out, and the water looks so inviting. But that's the trap. At the top of the falls, a sturdy metal guardrail and multiple warning signs make one thing very clear. Do not enter the water. The granite is slick, and the current is deceptive. Despite these warnings and the visible power of the river, the three friends decided to climb over the safety barrier. They walked out onto the wet rocks, just 25 feet from the brink of the massive waterfall, to pose for photos. Other hikers in the area were horrified, shouting at them to get back behind the rail, but the group ignored the pleas. It's like they thought the rules were just suggestions for people who weren't as adventurous as they were. The tragedy unfolded in seconds. One of the men slipped on the mossy granite. As his friends reached out to grab him, they were all pulled into the freezing, turbulent current. In full view of a crowded viewing area, the three friends were swept over the edge of the 317-foot fall. The search for their remains took weeks. Hormiz's body was eventually found 240 feet from the base of the falls, while the others were believed to be trapped in the violent hydraulics of the river. It was a devastating reminder that a guardrail isn't a suggestion. It's a lifeline. You have to wonder what they were thinking. The water was clearly moving at a terrifying speed, and yet they just stepped right into it. The Mist Trail is one of the most beautiful hikes in the world, but it's also one of the most deceptive. The spray from the falls makes everything slick, and the granite is like ice. The Park Service has since added even more signage, but as one ranger put it, you can't signpost against human nature. The families of the victims were left to grapple with a loss that was as sudden as it was preventable. The search for the remaining bodies was a grueling, multi-week operation that tested the limits of Yosemite's search and rescue teams. It's a story that is still told at the park's visitor centers today, a somber warning to every hiker who thinks the rules don't apply to them. The Merced River is a force of nature, and on that day, it showed no mercy. Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin is one of the hottest and most acidic thermal areas in the world. On June 7, 2016, 23-year-old Colin Scott and his sister decided to venture off the designated boardwalks. Their goal was hot potting, the illegal and incredibly dangerous practice of soaking in a natural thermal pool. They hiked nearly 225 yards into a closed area, passing numerous signs that warned of thin crusts and boiling water. It's one of those things where you think you're being clever, finding a secret spot that the other tourists don't know about. But in Yellowstone, the secrets can kill you. As Colin reached the edge of an unnamed hot spring near Porkchop Geyser, he reached down to check the temperature. In an instant, the fragile ground beneath him gave way. He slipped and fell directly into the near-boiling, highly acidic water. His sister, who was filming the excursion on her phone, witnessed the entire horrific event. She desperately tried to find help, but by the time rangers arrived, they could see Colin's body floating in the pool, surrounded by personal belongings. It's just the sheer speed of it is what gets me. One second he's there and the next, he's just gone. The recovery effort had to be halted due to a lightning storm and the extreme instability of the ground. When rangers returned the next morning, there was nothing left to recover. The high acidity and near-boiling temperatures of the pool had completely dissolved Colin's body in less than 24 hours. Yellowstone officials used the incident as a sobering warning. The park's thermal features aren't just hot, they are chemically aggressive. Colin's search for a relaxing soak ended in a silent, acidic tomb, leaving behind only a haunting video and a pair of flip-flops. It's just, you think you're safe because there's a fence, but the earth itself is literally being eaten away from below. It's a terrifying thought. The video his sister took was never released to the public, but the descriptions from the incident report are enough to give anyone nightmares. The Norris Geyser Basin is a place of extreme beauty, but it's also a place of extreme danger. The ground is literally a thin crust over a boiling cauldron of acid. The Park Service has used this case as a primary example in their safety briefings ever since. It's a reminder that Yellowstone isn't a petting zoo or a spa. It's a wild, unpredictable landscape that demands absolute respect. Colin was a young man with his whole life ahead of him, and a single impulsive decision ended it in the most horrific way imaginable. His sister has since become an advocate for park safety, sharing her story to prevent others from making the same fatal mistake. It's a heavy price to pay for a lesson that everyone should already know. Stay on the boardwalk. The Grand Canyon's South Rim offers some of the most breathtaking views in the world, but it also demands absolute focus. On July 3, 2020, 59-year-old Maria Salgado Lopez was visiting the park with her family during the busy Independence Day weekend. They were near Mather Point, one of the most popular and accessible viewpoints in the entire park. The area is well fenced and paved, designed to keep the millions of annual visitors safe from the sheer drops. It's the kind of place where you feel perfectly safe, surrounded by other families and clear paths. However, Maria decided to leave the paved trail to find a better angle for her photographs. She moved into an unprotected, off-trail area where the ground is uneven and the edge is unguarded. While focusing on her camera and the spectacular vista, she lost track of her footing. In a split second, she accidentally stepped off the cliff edge, falling approximately 100 feet into the canyon below. Her family could only watch in horror as she vanished from sight. It's so easy to get distracted when you're looking at something that big. You're focusing on the camera, the lighting, the framing, and you just forget where your feet are. Rangers were notified immediately and located her body about 100 feet below the rim. The fall was ruled accidental, a tragic result of distracted hiking. Photography is statistically one of the deadliest activities at the Grand Canyon, as visitors often prioritize the perfect shot over their own physical stability. Maria's death at such a family-friendly location served as a grim reminder that the canyon doesn't have a safety net. Even a short walk off the path can turn a vacation into a nightmare. The Grand Canyon is a place that demands your full attention every single second. The Park Service has seen a massive spike in these kinds of accidents since the rise of social media. Everyone wants that perfect shot, but no photo is worth your life. Maria was a beloved member of her community in Scottsdale, and her death sent shockwaves through the area. Her family has since spoken out about the dangers of distracted hiking, hoping to save others from the same fate. It's a tragic irony that she died at one of the most safe parts of the park. It just goes to show that danger is everywhere if you're not paying attention. The canyon is beautiful, yes, but it's also a giant, 100-foot deep trap for the unwary. Stay behind the railings, people. It's really that simple. Grand Canyon West, located on the Hualapai Reservation, is famous for the glass skywalk that extends over the abyss. On March 28, 2019, a man in his 50s from Hong Kong was visiting the site as part of a guided tour group. While the skywalk itself is heavily controlled and safe, the surrounding Eagle Point overlook features vast stretches of unprotected rim with vertical drops of over 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet? Just think about that for a second. That's like falling off the Empire State Building. The man wandered away from the more secure areas to take photographs near the edge. Witnesses reported seeing him trying to take selfies or close-up shots of the canyon when he suddenly lost his footing. He plummeted 1,000 feet down the sheer rock face. The fall was so deep that a rescue helicopter had to be used just to locate and recover his body from the canyon floor. The incident happened in late morning, in clear weather, with no environmental factors to blame other than the victim's proximity to the edge. It's hard to wrap your head around. All for a photo? The irony of this case is that many tourists fear the glass skywalk, yet it is the natural ground nearby that claims lives. This death was part of a cluster of 3 fatalities at the Grand Canyon in just 8 days, sparking a global conversation about the dangers of selfie culture. For this visitor, the pursuit of a digital memory cost him his life, proving that the most spectacular views are often the most unforgiving. Grand Canyon West is a commercial operation, and they do everything they can to keep people safe. But you can't fence off the entire canyon. At some point, personal responsibility has to kick in. The man was part of a tour group, and his fellow travelers were left traumatized by what they saw. The recovery of his body was a massive undertaking, involving helicopters and technical teams. It's a story that made headlines all over the world, a perfect example of the selfie death phenomenon. The desire for social media validation is a powerful thing, but it's a dangerous master. The canyon doesn't care about your Instagram feed. It's been there for millions of years, and it'll be there long after we're gone. Respect the edge, or the edge will claim you. It's a lesson that this visitor learned in the most final way possible. Angel's Landing in Zion National Park is widely considered one of the most dangerous day hikes in the United States. The final half-mile follows a narrow sandstone ridge with 1,000-foot drops on both sides, equipped only with a series of chains for hikers to grip. On August 9, 2009, 55-year-old Nancy Maltez was hiking this treacherous path with her family. It was a clear summer morning, and the trail was, as usual, crowded with tourists. Angel's Landing is a hike that everyone wants to do, but not everyone should do. As Nancy navigated the narrow fin section of the ridge, she reportedly stumbled or lost her footing on the north side of the formation. In an area where there is zero margin for error, she fell approximately 1,000 feet into the canyon below. Another hiker witnessed the fall and immediately called for help, but there was no chance of survival. Search and rescue teams located her body later that morning, a task that required technical expertise due to the extreme terrain. It's just 1,000 feet. It's hard to even visualize that kind of distance, and to think that it all happened in a split second. Despite the numerous signs at the trailhead warning that the hike is not for those with a fear of heights, thousands of people attempt it every day. Nancy's death contributed to the eventual implementation of a permit system for the chains section, aimed at reducing the overcrowding that makes the narrow ridge even more hazardous. Her story is a chilling example of how a single misstep on a bucket list hike can turn a scenic adventure into a 1,000-foot plunge. Nancy was a mother and a wife, and her family had to watch her fall. Can you even imagine that? The trauma of that moment is something they'll carry forever. The Park Service has tried to make the hike safer with the permit system, but the danger is still there. It's inherent to the trail. You're walking on a ridge that's only a few feet wide in some places, with 1,000-foot drop on either side. It's not a place for the faint of heart, and it's certainly not a place for a casual stroll. Nancy's death is one of many on that ridge, a somber tally that continues to grow. It's a reminder that even the most popular trails can be lethal if you're not prepared. Zion is a stunning park, but it's also a place of extreme verticality. Respect the heights, or they'll be the last thing you ever see. The half-dome cables in Yosemite are a rite of passage for many hikers, but they become a death trap in the wrong conditions. On July 31, 2011, 26-year-old Haley LaFlamme was descending the steep granite shoulder of Half Dome after successfully reaching the summit. The weather had turned, and a summer thunderstorm had left the granite surface and the metal cables slick and dangerously wet. The Half Dome cables are a massive challenge, and the descent is often harder than the ascent. You're tired, your legs are shaky, and your grip is weak. The National Park Service issues stern warnings. Do not attempt the cables if the rock is wet or if clouds are building. However, many hikers, having invested hours into the climb, feel pressured to finish. As Haley made her way down the steepest section, she lost her grip on the wet cables. She slipped on the smooth granite and slid 600 feet down the sheer eastern face of the dome. Other hikers on the cables watched helplessly as she vanished over the edge. It's just, you think you're safe because you're holding on to a cable, but when that cable is wet, it's like trying to hold on to a greased pole. Rangers recovered her body from the base of the dome later that day. Her death was part of an unusually deadly year for Yosemite, highlighting the summit fever that drives people to ignore clear environmental hazards. Haley had achieved her goal of reaching the top, but the descent proved that the mountain doesn't care about your accomplishments. It only cares about the laws of friction. It's just, you have to know when to turn around. It's the hardest decision to make, but it's also the most important. The mountain will always be there, but you might not be. Haley's death led to a lot of soul-searching in the hiking community, and it's a case that is still discussed in safety forums today. It's a reminder that nature is indifferent to our goals and our dreams. It just is. And if you don't respect it, it will break you. Stay safe out there and listen to the warnings. They're there for a reason. Just weeks after the tragedy on the Half Dome cables, Yosemite saw another bizarre and fatal incident on the same mountain. On August 22, 2011, 23-year-old Ryan Leader was exploring the vertical face of Half Dome. Unlike most visitors, Ryan wasn't on the standard cable route. He was scrambling or climbing on the technical face of the dome alone and without any safety ropes or a partner. He was an experienced climber, but even the best can make a mistake when they're pushing the limits of what's possible. Ryan was attempting to reach a specific ledge or viewpoint when he lost his footing. He fell approximately 4,000 feet down the sheer northwest face of Half Dome. The fall was so extreme that his body was shattered upon impact with the rocks below. Witnesses at the base of the dome reported hearing a sound like a gunshot when he hit the ground. It was a violent, instantaneous end to a life that had been dedicated to the outdoors. Ryan's death was a shock to the climbing community, a reminder that even the most skilled individuals are not immune to the laws of gravity. The investigation into his death concluded that it was an accident, likely caused by a single misstep or a loose rock. Ryan's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of solo climbing and the importance of having a partner and proper safety gear. Half Dome is a majestic mountain, but it's also a place that demands absolute respect. Ryan's death is a somber reminder that the mountains don't care about your skill level or your experience. They only care about the laws of physics. Stay safe and never climb alone. Yellowstone National Park is home to thousands of bison, massive animals that can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. Despite their size and power, many tourists treat them like oversized cows. In May 2022, a 25-year-old woman from Ohio was visiting the park and decided to get a closer look at a bison that was grazing near a boardwalk. She approached the animal within 10 feet, ignoring the park's rule that visitors must stay at least 25 yards away from bison. As she turned her back to the bison to take a selfie, the animal suddenly charged. It gored her with its horns and tossed her 10 feet into the air. The woman suffered serious injuries and was rushed to a hospital, where she eventually died. The incident was witnessed by dozens of other tourists, many of whom were also taking photos of the bison. It was a terrifying reminder that bison are wild animals, not pets. They are unpredictable and can be extremely aggressive if they feel threatened. The Park Service has used this case to emphasize the importance of staying away from wildlife. Bison are responsible for more injuries to tourists in Yellowstone than any other animal, including bears. They are fast, powerful, and can be deadly if they are not respected. The woman's death was a tragic and preventable accident, a result of a single impulsive decision to get a perfect photo. Yellowstone is a wild place, and the animals that live there are not there for our entertainment. Respect their space, or you might pay the ultimate price. Machu Picchu is one of the most heavily regulated archaeological sites on the planet. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people make the pilgrimage to the Peruvian Andes to stand among the ancient stone ruins of the Inca Empire. Because of the sheer drops and the fragile nature of the site, the Peruvian authorities have installed a complex system of safety cordons, ropes, and very clear signage. There are wardens stationed throughout the citadel, specifically tasked with blowing whistles and shouting at anyone who even looks like they might step off the designated path. It's a place where the rules are not just suggestions, They are the only thing standing between a visitor and a 1,000-foot drop into the Urubamba River Valley. On June 29, 2016, 51-year-old German tourist Oliver Park decided that the standard tourist experience wasn't enough for him. He wanted something more dramatic. He wanted a photo that would make it look like he was flying over the ancient city. To get it, he had to bypass a security cordon and enter a restricted zone that was clearly marked as dangerous. He didn't just step over a rope, he ignored the explicit verbal instructions of the wardens, who were literally shouting at him to stay back. Witnesses reported that he seemed completely unfazed by the warnings, as if the rules simply didn't apply to his quest for the perfect shot. Oliver made his way to a narrow ledge overlooking a steep ravine. Witnesses watched in disbelief as he prepared for his shot. He wasn't just standing there, he was reportedly attempting a jumping photo, a mid-air leap that would capture him suspended over the abyss. It's a popular, if incredibly risky, trend among younger travelers, but Oliver was a mature adult who should have known better. As he took that final, fatal jump, he lost his footing on the uneven, centuries-old rock. Instead of landing safely back on the ledge, he slipped and plummeted over the edge. He fell roughly 330 feet into the deep ravine below. The impact was instantaneous and devastating. It took rescue teams nearly an hour and a half just to reach his body in the difficult, overgrown terrain of the Andean slopes. The investigation was straightforward. Oliver had deliberately crossed multiple barriers and ignored every warning provided by the site's staff. He was a mature adult who died attempting a stunt that even a teenager might think twice about. Today, his story serves as a grim reminder that even the most sacred sites have no mercy for those who treat their safety rules as mere suggestions. It's a cautionary tale that is now frequently cited in travel safety pieces about the rising phenomenon of selfie deaths at world-famous landmarks. Sydney's Diamond Bay Reserve is famous for its stunning coastal cliffs and turquoise waters. It's also famous for being one of the most dangerous selfie hotspots in Australia. The cliffs are made of unstable sandstone that can crumble without warning, and the drops are vertical, leading straight down to jagged rocks and a churning sea. Because of this, the local council has installed high safety fences and numerous signs in multiple languages, all warning visitors that the cliffs are unstable and that crossing the fence is a life-threatening mistake. The area is a magnet for social media influencers, many of whom seem to believe that the danger is exaggerated for the sake of the signs. In January 2020, a 27-year-old woman was visiting the reserve with a group of people. Like so many others before her, she saw the fence not as a life-saving barrier, but as an annoyance. She wanted a photo on a specific ledge that had become a viral sensation on social media. To get there, she had to climb over the safety fence and walk out onto a narrow, unprotected strip of rock that was barely wide enough for a person to stand on. It was a clear, sunny day, and the view was spectacular, which only seemed to embolden her to take the risk. Witnesses at the lookout watched as she leaned out over the edge, trying to frame the perfect shot. In an instant, she lost her balance. There was no railing to catch her, no second chance. She fell 100 feet, striking the jagged rocks before disappearing into the churning water below. A massive rescue operation was launched immediately, involving helicopters, abseilers, and lifesavers. They eventually pulled her from the water, but the trauma of the fall and the impact with the rocks were too much. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The irony of this case is perhaps the most disturbing part. Within just a few hours of her body being recovered, other tourists were seen climbing over the exact same fence, standing in the exact same spot, and taking the exact same photos. It was as if the tragedy had never happened, or worse, as if it had only added to the legend of the spot. The council eventually had to consider installing CCTV, more physical barriers, and more frequent ranger patrols because even a fresh fatality wasn't enough to deter people from seeking social media validation. It seems that for some, the risk of a 100-foot fall is a small price to pay for a few hundred likes on a digital screen. The Nam Muang 2 waterfall on the Thai island of Koh Samui is a place of incredible natural beauty, but it's also a place of extreme danger. The upper tiers of the falls are notorious for their soap-slick rocks, moss-covered granite that becomes incredibly slippery, especially after the frequent tropical rains. To protect tourists, the local authorities have placed warning ropes and signs at the higher levels, explicitly telling visitors not to cross into the hazardous areas. The problem is that the most dangerous spots are also the most picturesque, creating a lethal temptation for those who live for the perfect Instagram post. In early January 2026, 22-year-old French tourist Alexis Virgos and his girlfriend decided to hike to the upper tiers of the falls. It was a drizzly day, and the rocks were even more treacherous than usual. When they reached the 5th tier, they encountered the warning ropes and signs. Despite the visible danger and the wet conditions, Alexis decided to cross the barrier to get a better angle for a photo. He was young, fit, and likely felt that the warnings were meant for less capable hikers. As he moved near the edge of the tier, he reportedly began stepping backward to widen the framing of his shot. It was a classic mistake, the kind that happens when you're more focused on the screen of your phone than the ground beneath your feet. His feet hit a patch of wet moss, and he lost all traction. He slipped and slid over the edge, falling several dozen meters into the rocky plunge pool of the 4th tier below. His girlfriend only survived because she managed to grab onto a tree branch as she watched him disappear over the ledge. When rescuers arrived, they described the terrain as nearly impossible to navigate, calling the rocks as slick as soap. Alexis had struck the rocks during his fall and died instantly. This wasn't the first time this had happened. He was at least the 6th foreign tourist to die at Nam Muang 2 in recent years, with many of those deaths occurring at the exact same spot. Despite the mounting body count and the clear warnings, tourists continue to cross those ropes, seemingly convinced that their balance is better than the dozens who came before them. The incident triggered renewed calls for stronger barriers and mandatory guides, but in a place as vast and wild as Koh Samui, the ultimate responsibility still lies with the individual. Yellowstone National Park is home to some of the most spectacular geothermal features on Earth, but it's also a place where the ground itself can kill you. The Norris Geyser Basin is particularly dangerous, filled with superheated, highly acidic pools that can reach temperatures well above boiling. Because the ground around these pools is often just a thin, fragile crust of mineral deposits, the park has built extensive boardwalks and installed hundreds of signs warning visitors to stay on the path. The signs are everywhere, featuring graphic illustrations of people falling through the crust into boiling water. Yet some visitors still treat the area like a theme park. On June 7, 2016, 23-year-old Colin Scott and his sister were visiting the basin. They weren't just there for the views, they were reportedly looking for a place to hot pot, an illegal and incredibly dangerous practice of soaking in the park's thermal springs. To find a suitable spot, they deliberately left the safety of the boardwalk and hiked into a restricted, highly active thermal zone. They were walking on ground that was literally a thin shell over a boiling cauldron of acid and steam. As they wandered through the steam, Colin's sister was filming on her phone, capturing their illegal trek for posterity. Colin walked up to the edge of a churning, crystal-clear pool to check the temperature, perhaps thinking it was just a natural hot tub. As he reached out, he slipped on the unstable, mineral-slicked ground and fell head first into the superheated water. His sister tried to reach him, but the heat was too intense, and the ground around the pool was crumbling. She ran for help, but by the time rangers arrived, it was clear that there was no hope for a rescue. The aftermath of this incident is one of the most gruesome in the park's history. Rangers initially saw Colin's body in the pool, but a lightning storm forced them to retreat for their own safety. When they returned the next morning, there was nothing left. The pool, which had a pH of about 5 and was superheated to over 212 degrees Fahrenheit, had essentially dissolved his body overnight. All that remained were a few personal items, like his wallet and flip-flops, which had been spared by the acid. Colin had ignored every warning the park provided, and in return, the park had quite literally erased him from existence. It's a stark reminder that in Yellowstone, the boardwalk is the only thing between you and a very painful, very permanent end. Grand Canyon West is famous for the Skywalk, a massive, horseshoe-shaped glass bridge that allows visitors to walk out over the abyss with total safety. It's a marvel of engineering designed to give people the thrill of the canyon without the risk. However, the area around the Skywalk, known as Eagle Point, remains largely natural, with unprotected rim edges and simple signs warning visitors to stay back. The Hualapai tribe, who manage the site, have done their best to balance the natural beauty of the canyon with the safety of the millions who visit, but they can't account for every reckless impulse. On March 28, 2019, a man in his 50s from Hong Kong was visiting Eagle Point as part of a tour group. Despite being just a few yards away from the perfectly safe Skywalk, he decided he wanted a more authentic photo from the actual rim of the canyon. He walked past the warning signs and approached the very edge of the 1,000-foot drop. It was a clear day, and the view was breathtaking, but the limestone at the rim can be crumbly and unpredictable. He was so focused on his camera that he seemed to forget the sheer drop just inches from his feet. As he was framing his shot, he reportedly stumbled. In a place like the Grand Canyon, a single stumble is all it takes. There are no second chances when you're standing on the edge of a vertical mile. He fell over the edge in full view of other horrified tourists, including members of his own tour group. He dropped 1,000 feet to the canyon floor below. A helicopter was eventually called in to recover his body, a process that took several hours due to the remote and difficult terrain at the base of the cliffs. The irony here is staggering. The man was visiting a site that had spent millions of dollars to provide a safe way to experience the height of the canyon. He chose to ignore that safety and the posted warnings for the sake of a photo that he thought would look better without a railing in the way. He became one of 3 people to die from falls at the Grand Canyon in just an 8-day period that year, highlighting a persistent problem. No matter how much safety infrastructure you build, you can't protect people from their own poor decisions. His death led to renewed calls for more restrictive barriers, but many argue that the canyon should remain as natural as possible, leaving the responsibility for safety in the hands of the visitors. Mather Point is one of the most popular overlooks on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. It's heavily developed with paved trails, sturdy railings, and constant safety announcements. It's designed to be as safe as possible for the millions of people who visit every year. But even here, people find ways to bypass the safety measures in search of a better view or a more daring photo. The railings are built to withstand heavy crowds, but they are only effective if people stay on the right side of them. On July 3, 2020, during a busy Independence Day weekend, an Arizona woman was hiking near Mather Point. The weather was turning stormy, with wind and rain making the already dangerous rim even more treacherous. Despite the conditions and the clear presence of railings, the woman decided to leave the paved trail and climb over a safety barrier to get closer to the edge for a photo. The rain had made the Kaibab limestone as slick as ice, and the wind was gusting, creating a perfect storm of hazards for anyone foolish enough to leave the path. Witnesses saw her in a position that was quite a ways off the designated path, standing on a narrow ledge that offered no protection. As she was attempting to take her pictures, she lost her footing on the slick, rain-soaked rock. She fell about 100 feet below the rim. While 100 feet might not sound like much compared to the 1,000-foot drops elsewhere in the canyon, it was more than enough to be fatal. Rangers had to perform a technical recovery using ropes and a litter to retrieve her body from the ledge where she landed. This incident happened at a time when the park was already on high alert due to the holiday crowds. The safety messaging was at its peak, with rangers and signs everywhere, yet she chose to ignore the physical barriers and the deteriorating weather. Her death served as a grim reminder to the thousands of other visitors that weekend that the railings aren't there to ruin the view. They're there to keep you from becoming a statistic in a place that has no room for error. It's a tragic example of how a single moment of overconfidence can lead to a lifetime of consequences for those left behind. Ericeira, a picturesque fishing village in Portugal, is known for its beautiful beaches and dramatic cliffs. One of the most popular spots is the cliff wall overlooking Praia dos Pescadores, or Fisherman's Beach. It's a stunning location, but the cliffs are notoriously unstable, and the local authorities have placed numerous signs warning people to stay away from the edge and not to sit on the low walls that line the top. The wall itself is a low stone structure that looks inviting to sit on, but it's built on the very edge of a vertical drop. In June 2018, Michael Kearns and Louise Benson, a couple living in Australia, were visiting Ericeira as part of a long-planned world tour. They were in town for a wedding and were enjoying the local scenery. At some point during the night or early morning hours, they went to the top of the cliff wall. Authorities believe they were attempting to take a selfie together, sitting or leaning on the wall to get the beach in the background. It, too, was a romantic setting, but the lack of light and the height of the wall made it a deadly choice. They fell nearly 100 feet from the wall, landing on the sand below. Their bodies weren't discovered until the next morning when a beach cleaner arrived to start his shift. A mobile phone was found near them, further supporting the theory that a photo was the cause of the tragedy. They had ignored the signs warning of unstable cliffs and the dangers of sitting on the wall, likely thinking that the wall provided a safe perch. It's a classic example of how a familiar-looking structure can lull people into a false sense of security. The tragedy of this case is compounded by the fact that they were on a celebratory trip, traveling the world and attending a friend's wedding. They were mature, experienced travelers, yet they fell into the same trap as so many others. Local reports noted that this was not the first time tourists had fallen from that exact cliff. Despite the history of fatalities and the clear signage, the allure of the perfect coastal photo continues to draw people to the edge, often with fatal results. The local community was devastated, and the incident led to renewed discussions about whether the wall should be raised or if more aggressive policing of the area was needed. Returning to the Namuang 2 waterfall in Thailand, we find a pattern of behavior that defies logic. After the death of Alexis Virgos in 2026 and several others before him, the site became a focal point for discussions on tourist safety. The 5th tier of the falls is a known death trap, yet the warnings continue to be ignored by those who believe they are the exception to the rule. It's a cycle of tragedy that seems to repeat itself every few months, driven by the relentless pursuit of social media content. The rocks at Namuang 2 are covered in a specific type of algae that becomes as slippery as ice when wet. The local government has installed multi-language signs and heavy ropes to block off the most dangerous sections. They have even considered making it mandatory for tourists to hire a local guide to visit the upper tiers. Yet, almost every week, rangers find people crossing the ropes, often with expensive camera gear in hand. They are often seen laughing and joking as they bypass the barriers, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they are standing on a graveyard. One particularly shocking aspect of the deaths here is the tunnel vision that seems to take over. Tourists become so focused on the screen of their phone or the viewfinder of their camera that they lose all situational awareness. They step backward to get a wider shot, or they lean out to get a better angle, completely forgetting that they are standing on a surface that offers zero grip. It's a form of modern-day hypnosis where the digital image becomes more real than the physical danger. The statistics at Namuang 2 are a sobering testament to human stubbornness. At least 6 foreign tourists have been killed there since 2019, with many more suffering life-altering injuries. One British soldier who survived a fall there faced medical bills of over 4 million baht and years of rehabilitation. The warnings are there, the history of death is well documented, and the danger is visible to the naked eye. Yet, as long as the waterfall remains beautiful, people will continue to ignore the signs, convinced that the perfect photo is worth the risk of a final, fatal slip. It's a battle between common sense and the desire for validation, and at Namuang 2, the waterfall is winning. In August 2011, a 20-year-old Japanese exchange student named Ayano Tokumasu was visiting the Canadian side of the falls with her friends. Like millions of other tourists, she wanted to capture the perfect photo of the Horseshoe Falls, the largest and most powerful of the 3 waterfalls. The area near Table Rock is a spectacular viewpoint, but it is also constantly coated in a fine, slippery mist from the thundering water below. Despite the clearly marked safety railings and the wet, treacherous conditions, Ayano decided to climb onto a concrete post to get a better view. She sat straddling the railing, looking down at the massive wall of water just 80 feet upstream from the brink. Witnesses saw her posing for a photo, her feet dangling over the edge. When she attempted to stand up and climb back down to safety, her feet slipped on the wet surface. She lost her balance and fell backward into the fast-moving upper river. The current in the Niagara River above the falls is deceptively fast, moving at nearly 25 miles per hour. Ayano was swept toward the edge in a matter of seconds. Her friends and other tourists could only watch in horror as she disappeared over the 167-foot drop of the Horseshoe Falls. Her body was recovered 4 days later near the Cave of the Winds on the American side. It was a tragic and entirely preventable death, a stark reminder that a vacation photo is never worth bypassing the safety barriers designed to keep you alive. In June 1990, a 28-year-old American named Jesse Sharp arrived at Niagara Falls with a plan that was as arrogant as it was dangerous. Sharp was an experienced whitewater kayaker, and he believed his skills were enough to conquer the Horseshoe Falls. He didn't just want to survive the drop. He wanted to do it with style. He was so confident in his success that he had actually made a dinner reservation at a restaurant in Lewiston, New York, for later that evening, assuming he would simply paddle the 4 miles downriver after his successful run. Sharp's overconfidence led him to make several fatal decisions. He refused to wear a life jacket, fearing it would trap him if his kayak became pinned under the water. He also refused to wear a helmet because he wanted his face to be clearly visible in the photos and videos of his stunt. He believed that his ability to read the water would be enough to protect him from the millions of tons of pressure at the base of the falls. As he paddled his plastic kayak into the upper rapids, a crowd of tourists gathered to watch. He went over the lip of the Horseshoe Falls and disappeared into the massive curtain of white water. His empty kayak was found floating downstream a short time later, but Jesse Sharp was never seen again. He never made it to his dinner reservation. His body was never recovered, likely trapped in the violent currents at the base of the falls or swept out into Lake Ontario. His story remains a textbook example of how even expert skills are no match for the raw, indifferent power of Niagara. In October 1995, a 39-year-old Californian named Robert Overacker decided to use Niagara Falls as a stage for a high-stakes stunt. His goal was to raise awareness for homelessness, and his plan involved riding a jet ski over the Horseshoe Falls. To ensure his survival, he had fitted the jet ski with a rocket-assisted parachute system that was supposed to deploy the moment he launched off the edge, allowing him to float safely down to the river below. Overacker was not a professional stuntman, but he had spent months preparing for the jump. On the day of the event, he rode his jet ski into the upper river, heading straight for the brink while tourists and photographers watched from the shore. He reached the edge and launched into the air, a spectacular sight that was captured in a famous photograph. But as he fell, the unthinkable happened. The parachute failed to deploy. The rocket-assisted mechanism malfunctioned, and Overacker fell 167 feet through the air with no protection. He hit the water at the base of the falls with incredible force. The crew of the Maid of the Mist tour boat, who were nearby, rushed to the scene and managed to pull him from the water. He was still alive when they reached him, but he had sustained massive internal injuries and was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Overacker's death was a tragic irony. He had risked everything for a social cause, but his reliance on a single, unproven piece of technology cost him his life in front of thousands of witnesses. Kirk Jones is a name that is legendary in the history of Niagara Falls, but for all the wrong reasons. In 2003, Jones became the first person to ever survive an intentional, unprotected plunge over the Horseshoe Falls. He went over the edge wearing nothing but his street clothes and survived with only minor injuries. He was fined and banned from the park, but he gained a level of notoriety that he seemed to crave for the rest of his life. In April 2017, Jones returned to the falls for an encore. This time, he decided to use a large inflatable ball, believing it would provide the protection he lacked during his first jump. He was seen by observers in the upper rapids, spinning inside the 10-foot ball as it headed toward the American Falls. The ball went over the edge and was later recovered downstream, but it was empty. Jones was nowhere to be found. His body was discovered nearly 2 months later, miles downstream where the Niagara River meets Lake Ontario. It appeared that he had either fallen out of the ball during the descent, or the ball had been shredded by the rocks at the base of the American Falls, which are far more jagged and dangerous than those at the Horseshoe Falls. Jones's death was a case of survivor's overconfidence. He believed that because he had beaten the falls once, he was invincible. In the end, the mountain of water he had once conquered proved to be his final resting place. The Rainbow Bridge connects the United States and Canada, providing a safe and legal way for thousands of people to cross the border every day. But in September 2015, a Mexican national decided that the official customs checkpoint was a nuisance he didn't want to deal with. Instead of presenting his documents, he decided to use the bridge as a literal shortcut into the United States by climbing over the safety railing. It was a dark Wednesday evening, and the man likely believed he could climb along the bridge's structure or drop down to a ledge that would allow him to sneak into the country undetected. He failed to realize that the bridge sits nearly 200 feet above the rocky gorge and the churning river below. As he climbed over the edge, he lost his grip on the cold metal railing. He fell over 100 feet, striking the jagged rocks that line the shore of the Niagara River. Emergency responders were called to the scene after witnesses reported seeing a man fall from the bridge. They found him on the rocky shore, but he had already succumbed to the massive trauma of the fall. He was pronounced dead at the scene. It was a desperate and foolish attempt to bypass a simple legal process, and it resulted in a violent death in one of the most heavily monitored areas of the border. He had chosen the deadliest possible route into the country, ignoring the fact that the bridge was designed to keep people safe, not to be a climbing wall. While the waterfalls themselves get most of the attention, the Niagara Gorge is a place of immense danger that many hikers and tourists fail to take seriously. The gorge is lined with steep cliffs, loose shale, and narrow paths that can be incredibly slippery even in the best weather. Over the years, numerous tourists have lost their lives in the gorge, not by going over the falls, but by simply leaving the marked trails to get a better view of the rapids below. One common scenario involves visitors climbing over the low stone walls or wooden fences that line the trails. They step onto rocky ledges or grassy slopes, unaware that the ground beneath them is unstable. A single slip on a patch of loose gravel can send a person tumbling hundreds of feet down the vertical cliffs. In many cases, these falls are witnessed by family members or friends who can do nothing but watch as their loved ones disappear into the shadows of the gorge. Rescue operations in the Niagara Gorge are incredibly difficult and dangerous for the teams involved. They often have to use specialized rope systems to reach the victims, who are frequently found deceased at the base of the cliffs. These deaths are often categorized as accidental, but they are almost always the result of a tourist ignoring the clear warnings and barriers put in place by the Park Service. The desire for a slightly more dramatic photo or a closer look at the water is a gamble that far too many people lose in the silence of the gorge. In May 2011, tourists on the Canadian side of the falls noticed something bizarre and terrifying. A woman was in the water above the American Falls. She wasn't a stunt woman, and she hadn't fallen in by accident. According to witnesses, she appeared to have voluntarily entered the river to swim or wade, seemingly oblivious to the fact that she was standing just a few hundred feet upstream from a 170-foot drop. The Niagara River above the American Falls is filled with hidden rocks and powerful undertows that can sweep even the strongest swimmer off their feet. As the woman moved further into the current, the water began to pull her toward the brink. She struggled to swim back to the shore, but the force of the river was too great. Tourists watched in stunned silence as she was carried over the edge of the American Falls and disappeared into the mist. Her body was recovered a short time later at the base of the falls. There was no indication of foul play or a suicide attempt. It appeared to be a case of extreme recklessness or a total lack of understanding of the river's power. Entering the Niagara River anywhere near the falls is a death sentence, yet every few years, a tourist decides that the water looks inviting enough for a quick dip. It is a mistake that the river never fails to punish with the ultimate price. In July 1920, an Englishman named Charles Stevens decided to become a Niagara legend by going over the Horseshoe Falls in a custom-made oak barrel. Stevens was a barber by trade, but he had a passion for high-stakes stunts. He believed that the key to surviving the falls was to stay firmly anchored inside the barrel, so he came up with a plan that was as stupid as it was lethal. He strapped a heavy iron anvil to his feet to act as a ballast, ensuring the barrel would stay upright during the plunge. His friends and fellow stuntmen warned him that the anvil was a terrible idea, but Stevens refused to listen. He climbed into the barrel, strapped his feet to the anvil, and was launched into the upper river. The barrel went over the Horseshoe Falls and hit the water at the base with incredible force. The weight of the anvil, instead of stabilizing the barrel, acted like a hammer. When the barrel hit the water, the anvil was ripped through the bottom, taking Charles Stevens' legs with it. When the barrel was recovered downstream, it was empty except for a single item: Stevens' right arm, which was still strapped to a safety harness inside. The rest of his body was never found. It was a gruesome end to a stunt that had been doomed from the start by a fundamental misunderstanding of physics. Stevens had literally tied himself to his own death, proving that at Niagara Falls, even the most elaborate safety plans can become a death trap if they aren't grounded in reality. On the morning of December 26, 2004, the beaches of Khao Lak and Phuket in Thailand were filled with thousands of tourists enjoying the warm tropical sun. Suddenly, the ocean did something extraordinary. It vanished. The water retreated hundreds of yards from the shore, exposing a vast alien landscape of coral reefs, stranded fish, and shimmering shells that had never been seen by human eyes. For most people on the beach, this wasn't a warning. It was a curiosity. Instead of running for higher ground, hundreds of tourists walked out onto the newly exposed seabed. They carried cameras and camcorders, eager to document the strange phenomenon. Parents led their children by the hand to pick up shells from the dry sand, completely unaware that the ocean was currently gathering its strength just over the horizon. The silence of the receding tide was the only warning they received, and they treated it like a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. The first wave didn't look like a wall of water. It looked like a churning, brown line of debris on the horizon. By the time the tourists realized the water was coming back, it was already moving faster than they could run. The wave surged across the flat seabed, picking up speed as it reclaimed the shore. Those who were furthest out had no chance. They were swept up in a torrent of salt water and jagged coral, while those on the beach were slammed into palm trees and hotel buildings. The 2004 tsunami would eventually claim over 227,000 lives, many of whom were tourists who had stood on the sand, filming their own demise. In September 2018, the coastal city of Palu, on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, was hosting a major cultural festival. Hundreds of people, including many young travelers and local families, had gathered on the beach for a night of music and celebration. When a massive 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck, the ground shook so violently that buildings in the city collapsed. On the beach, the music stopped and the power went out, leaving the festival grounds in eerie darkness. Despite the intensity of the shaking, a primary natural warning for a tsunami, many people stayed in the low-lying festival area. There was confusion about whether a tsunami was actually coming, and some reports suggested that the initial warning had been lifted too early. In the narrow, funnel-shaped Palu Bay, the water was already rising. Within minutes of the earthquake, a series of waves, some reaching heights of nearly 20 feet, roared into the bay. The festival-goers had nowhere to go. The waves swept over the Ao Boulevard, crushing the temporary stages and stalls and dragging everyone into the churning water. Witnesses described a scene of total chaos as the ocean surged through the streets, carrying cars, trees, and houses like toys. Over 4,300 people were killed in the Palu disaster. The tragedy highlighted a lethal combination of technical failure and a lack of public awareness, as the very place people had gathered for a celebration became a death trap in less than 10 minutes. The 2011 Tohoku earthquake in Japan was one of the most powerful ever recorded. and the country's tsunami warning system is widely considered the best in the world. However, in the immediate aftermath of the 9.1 magnitude quake, the initial alerts underestimated the scale of the threat. Some early reports suggested that the waves might only be about 8 inches high. For many residents and tourists in the coastal towns of Miyagi and Iwate, this seemed like a manageable risk. Believing the danger was minimal, some people stayed in their homes or near the shore to watch the water. Others evacuated to designated shelters that were located on relatively low ground, assuming they would be safe from a small surge. But the ocean doesn't always follow the first set of data. As the massive displacement of the seabed reached the shallow coastal waters, the waves grew to heights of over 130 feet in some areas, traveling miles inland and overtopping massive seawalls. The 20-centimeter myth proved fatal for thousands. By the time the warnings were upgraded to major tsunami, the water was already hitting the coast. More than 100 official evacuation sites were completely inundated, and over 22,000 people were killed or went missing. The disaster served as a grim lesson for the entire world. When a massive earthquake strikes near the coast, any tsunami warning, no matter how small the initial estimate, must be treated as a life-threatening emergency. In July 2025, a powerful 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Kamchatka, Russia, triggering tsunami advisories across the entire Pacific Ocean. In Hawaii, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued a formal warning, and sirens began to blare across the islands. On Waikiki Beach, one of the most famous tourist destinations in the world, the sound was unmistakable. Police officers moved through the sand with megaphones, ordering thousands of sunbathers to leave the beach and move to the third floor or higher of nearby hotels. While locals and savvy travelers immediately packed their bags and headed for safety, a shocking number of tourists did the opposite. Viral videos from that afternoon show people staying in the water, surfing the small swells, and even standing at the water's edge to take selfies with the empty beach behind them. Some tourists were seen arguing with police, claiming they had paid for their vacation and didn't want to leave the sun. They treated the sirens like a nuisance rather than a command to save their own lives. Fortunately, the tsunami that reached Hawaii that day was relatively small, resulting in only minor flooding and strong currents. But the behavior of the tourists sparked national outrage. Emergency officials pointed out that if the wave had been just a few feet higher, the crowded beach would have become a scene of mass casualties. The incident highlighted a growing problem in modern tourism: a sense of entitlement and a reliance on social media that often overrides basic survival instincts and respect for local emergency protocols. The coast of Tamil Nadu in India is home to several ancient and highly revered seaside shrines. In December 2004, hundreds of pilgrims had gathered at one such shrine for a religious festival. When the tsunami waves generated by the Sumatra earthquake reached the Indian coast, the sea began to behave strangely. The water receded far from the shore, and a loud, low roar began to echo from the horizon. Unlike the tourists in Thailand who were curious about the shells, many of the pilgrims in India believed the receding sea was a divine sign. They stayed on the beach, praying and watching the horizon, even as the roar grew louder. There was no official warning system in place at the time, and the local population had no historical memory of a tsunami. They stood their ground, believing they were protected by the sacred nature of the site. When the wall of water finally appeared, it was moving at nearly 30 miles per hour. It swept over the beach and the shrine grounds with incredible force, dragging hundreds of people into the sea. The core of the shrine reportedly remained standing, but the area around it was decimated. over 600 pilgrims were killed in that single location. The tragedy was a heartbreaking example of how a lack of scientific knowledge, combined with a deep-seated belief in spiritual protection, can lead to disaster when faced with the raw, indifferent power of the ocean. Robinson Crusoe Island, located about 400 miles off the coast of Chile, is a remote paradise known for its rugged beauty and unique wildlife. In February 2010, a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck central Chile, sending a series of tsunami waves toward the island. Because the island is so remote, the official warning from the mainland didn't arrive in time. However, a 12-year-old girl named Martina Maturana noticed the shaking and saw the ocean beginning to pull back from the harbor. Martina ran to the village square and began to ring the emergency bell, a signal that every resident on the island knew meant tsunami. Most of the locals immediately dropped everything and ran for the hills. But for the tourists staying in the small guest houses near the water, the bell was just a strange, loud noise. Many of them stayed in their beds or walked out onto their balconies to see what the commotion was about, ignoring the frantic shouts of the locals who were fleeing past them. Minutes later, a 10-foot wave surged through the village of San Juan Bautista, destroying homes, businesses, and the local school. While Martina's quick thinking saved the lives of nearly 600 residents, several tourists who failed to heed the bell were swept away. Their bodies were later found nearly a mile inland, tangled in the debris of the village. The incident became a textbook case in disaster management, illustrating that in a crisis, local knowledge and traditional warning signals are often more reliable than high-tech systems, but only if you choose to listen. In January 2022, the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcanic eruption sent shockwaves around the globe and triggered a tsunami that affected coastlines as far away as Japan and the Americas. In the immediate aftermath of the eruption, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued advisories for the entire west coast of the United States and South America. In Peru, the government issued a warning for abnormal waves and advised people to stay away from the beaches. Despite these clear warnings, 2 women were driving along a coastal road near the beach in Lambayeque, Peru. They had reportedly gone to the area to see the unusual sea activity that everyone was talking about on the news. As they drove near the water's edge, a sudden, powerful surge of water swept over the road, dragging their truck into the ocean. Both women drowned before rescuers could reach them. Similar scenes played out in Tonga itself, where some residents and visitors stayed near the shore to film the initial small waves, only to be caught off guard by a much larger surge that followed minutes later. The 2022 event was unique because it was caused by a volcano rather than an earthquake, which led many people to believe the risk was lower. But as the victims in Peru and Tonga proved, the ocean doesn't care about the source of the energy. Once the water is in motion, it is a lethal threat to anyone standing in its path. Turn on notifications so the next story finds you. The card on your screen has more waiting. Out there, a wild animal is never as tame as it looks.